Hello and welcome to the Design Versus podcast, where a designer takes on a worthy opponent to battle it out over a heated topic that may just get viral by the end of this video. Joining me this week is our very own content manager, who I must say keeps his cool under pressure. That was up until before we started recording. Anyway, he's recovered now. It's Raza Kazi. How are you feeling, mate?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me on this podcast.
No problem.
Yeah. I wanted to start with a quote that I read last night. It's a famous quote that you and I actually both know. I think you should know too, to be fair.
Okay.
Content precedes design. Design in the absence of content is not design. It's decoration. It's by, do you know who it's by?
I don't know who's by, but I 100% agree with it.
It's Zellman. There's a guy called Zellman on Twitter, but he's actually very famous and well-renowned. But I disagree with it.
I'm sure you do.
Which and here's why. Content is content and design is design. Whether content precedes design or not is a different matter altogether, to be honest, for me. But it's not about what I think, it's about what you think. So does content should it precede design, or should it?
Yes, every single time. I think we kind of had a mini sort of debate already about this in the past. And I think my go-to example was like a book. I know we're talking about digital marketing and digital assets, but in a book, like, I'm not going to keep reading a book because the front cover was nice, because they designed it really well. I read it because of the story, because of the words and how it's written. Same with a blog. Yeah, I mean, design would enhance it, make it look pretty, it'll keep me on the page. But I think if I'm going to buy something or if I'm going to use a service, it's the words that are going to convince me, not a nice banner or something like that. I'm sorry, I don't want to insult you or anything. I'm just saying, like,
Products and
I think products are different.
products are different. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
I mean, like, if it's
you see
visual,
a pair of shoes on the
Yeah.
shelf, it's the design that's going to bring you to it.
Great example.
Not the word Nike that was written on it. Like, it's
that's a good example. You know, the way to my heart with trainers is a good example. I think anything that is visual, I don't need to know the history of it. If it looks good, I'll buy it.
yeah.
But I guess you're right. It varies depending on the context. But in general, I'd say copy before design.
That goes without saying. You do need some sort of content to fuel the design.
Yeah.
However, design doesn't stand always with content in a sense that it has to follow set rules and say, oh, yeah, this piece of content is going to define the entire design. Because sometimes it does. In most cases, it actually does, because of web copy. You know, web copy is one of the biggest problems because of how much we can only put in that makes the design look good, and then you come with the content and now suddenly everything's broken. So
That's the thing. I think we've experienced ourselves with web work, especially, that if you try and write to a design, it's not going to work because your copy's not going to be great. It's not going to be engaging. You're trying to force creativity to fit a 200-word limit, in my opinion. And again, it's obviously biased because I'm from a content background. Designers need to make it work for content. Like, okay, you've given me 400 words, for example. I need to create a design that can make these 400 words look good and stand out and demand attention. I think if you do it the other way, it's not going to work. Because again, as I said, with like a buyer's intent or someone trying to get education, they need the words. They don't need, the aesthetics. As good as they are, and as good of a designer as you and Dave both are, I feel like you need the copy as well to do your best work. Feel free to say I'm wrong, but that's my opinion.
I'm not going to say you're wrong. We'll agree to disagree.
Okay.
That's going to be the sort of overall. By the end of it, you and I are still going to be friends.
We'll see. We'll see.
But what I want to say is, like, I'm trying to think of situations, or rather deliverables, where it doesn't matter so much with design, with having content, or rather work that doesn't require too much emphasis on content. I'm thinking of things like a poster.
Yeah.
Where, although the content's important, like, what is it, when is it, why should I care?
Yeah.
The image itself is what's going to attract them. You said the book before, right? And
Yeah.
I just think, well, the cover is what attracts them. The title as well, maybe, if it's going to be enticing enough and you've written it in the right way. But put the same title front cover on a white background with black text.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, using that example, there's two sides of it. One, I get where you're coming from, but two, like if famous author has got a new book coming out, I'm not gonna pick it up because it's in black and white. Like I'm gonna read it.
Yeah.
Because I like the author and the way they tell the stories.
So that's down to the author. So that's recognition of their work and knowing, having some kind of.
Yeah, but to get there, they've told good stories. The words on a paper is what's built.
Yeah, so no matter what book they'll write, you'll just pick it up and say,
yeah, that's one side.
By this guy.
But the other side of it is I don't know who sells books, W.H. Smith, whatever. When you go there and you've never seen a book before, and yeah, a nice front cover will interest you, but I'm not going to keep reading it because the front cover's nice. Like I'm gonna, if it attracts, if it looks good, I'll pick it up, I'll flick through it. But if the words are crap and it doesn't read well, I'm not going to keep reading it because I love the design so much.
No, but you've already paid for it now. So
that's it.
You've done. So the purpose of design and actually the purpose of content, would you agree, is to get people to purchase in the first place or to make an action in the first place, right? But let me add this to that, right? So yeah, if you're not going to keep reading it, but you paid for it. So the design here is more important here because it's the difference between the sale and not. Like, if they didn't see it in the first place from a distance, they'll just be like looking elsewhere, thinking, oh, that book looks good. And so they don't read your book, they read someone else's book.
I get that. And I'm not afraid to admit I'm not the biggest reader in the world. So I don't know if that's what people do and pick up a design and buy. In my head, if they find something that they like the look of, that's when they'd go and do the research. What are people saying about the book? Is it worth buying? Can I get a free version online? That's probably the first thing I do. That's what I do rather than buying it just because of the cover. I don't know if people stand there and flick through pages and read it. Probably do. But I'd be very surprised if people buy a book because the front cover interested them enough to hand over their money for it.
Let me add to this then. We're still on the topic of books, it seems, and it's slowly become designed versus books, but that's okay. Because books and content.
It works. It's copy versus design versus aesthetics. I think it works in any example, whether it's digital or physical. Yeah,
I became a designer because when I was at school, I was reading the textbooks, as everyone had to. We've all been through them, revision books and all these guides on maths, physics, history. But they weren't the most exciting books to read. Just overall plain black and white, odd bit of colour here and there. Some of them were clip arty, or word art rather. The whole thing put me off from wanting to read more and learn more. Having a nice design structure in place and having some kind of user experience involved throughout it all helped.
Yeah.
For a lot of some of the better books that are now being released these days, is why I tend to think, content will always be there. Content alone is just, words on a white page that someone may not even care and just read. Yeah, you get the odd few people who do that, but for the most part, you want good structure, good hierarchy, good layouts, and things that are going to be fun to read. Like you're reading and you want to read more. Okay, a good book is more like a good movie where you're getting into it because you start to read into the story. That's fine, but the action there in the first place to get them to read that, I just think that's more takes precedence there than it does obviously in general. And we talk about the websites, however, and we talk about ebooks and all the other deliverables that we offer. Then I guess you would say content needs to be the more important thing.
I mean, yeah, again, part of that, agree to disagree. But yeah, I think for the main part, design does content need design? I'd say yeah, in the sense of getting people to notice. But can it survive without design? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can it work the other way around?
No. Because the other way around,
it's just colours and designs on a page with nothing. What do I do? If I go on a website, there's no copy there. What am I doing?
I mean, sure. when I was,
a poster with no words, a slide deck with no text.
particularly if you're designing about something that you don't know anything about, but if
Yeah.
I was a designer writing about my own passions and doing my own
Yeah,
sort of,
yeah.
then it's a bit different, I suppose. Then I have total control because I can write whatever I want, reduce text, whatever I want to do with that. I have a bit more freedom with it, whereas sometimes content can limit me.
Yeah, I agree. And there's one thing you said earlier, which I totally get, and I think it's probably your biggest frustration. Probably something not a lot of content writers or marketers take into account is when you do have a deliverable that is very visual, like a poster or an infographic, and they just go all out and give you a load of text here or below, design me this infographic.
Infographics is the worst ones.
That's when I think design does take precedence over copy, because I think it's supposed to be very visual. That's the aim.
Yeah. White papers as well. White papers is the next sort of gripe I have, because I might as well have just written a book out and just done a nice looking front cover and that's it. But for the rest of it,
so I think it depends on the situation. I think if you know you're going to make something that is very visual, design needs to be it takes precedence over content. But most of the time, 9 times out of 10, in my opinion, copy over design, and I stand by that till the day I die. You're not going to change my mind on this podcast.
I mean, there was no intention of changing your mind. It's just a discussion.
We're not going to agree either. I know that for a fact.
Yeah.
We're not going to agree.
Anyway, I think we've talked enough about how important design is more than content. But one of the things I wanted to ask, we have a creative process. Do you have a creative process too, really? Because you don't just write words. Well, you do. But you write it with care, and you do a bit of research, and you've got a bit of you got a few rules that you follow. How similar is the process?
First, that was the nicest thing you've ever said about content. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Similar process. I think you have more guardrails than we do. I think we have the freedom to not be more creative. That's probably the wrong word. But to experiment a little bit more, because you're going to have the brand guidelines. The colours you can't really change, because that's what a company's branding is. They might like every piece of work to look the same, but obviously the words are different, whereas we can try with length and just the way we structure it.
Where do you get your ideas from?
Google. I'm joking. No.
Google in general.
I think more...
Same.
I think it's difficult. I think when you write for Digital 22, you're going to have a lot of ideas in your head that you want to try. I think when it's your own thing, like you said, with your own passion, you're going to be more experimental. You're going to try new things. And I think if viewers go and check out the D22 podcast, they'd see how we are more experimental and not as fearful of as we would with the client. Like with the client, I wouldn't, not like I drop F-bombs everywhere in content, but with D22 it might work in the context, whereas with the client they'd be like, what are you doing? We don't do that sort of stuff. So I think with D22 you can just be more creative, or your own brand, you can be a lot more creative. I think that's, when you're in an agency, that is kind of the double-edged sword. You want to be super creative for a client, but what's the limit? I don't know.
The tone of voice for me and the branding go hand in hand anyway, because that's what we do when we're offering the branding projects out, or just especially before we start working with a client, we look at and revisit, and sometimes we do an audit. And in those situations, we've got a lot of similar, like the voice and the way they look both have to marry up together. I suppose then when it comes to the actual process of designing, we still create flexibility for ourselves. We still have the options to play around with the color palette a little bit, to not sort of change it, but to use different tones and shades. And then when it comes to type, we're playing around and experimenting, but not breaking anything that they currently want to be perceived as a client, because the personas that they've got, we've got to, as an example, if we're selling ice to the Eskimos, we're not going to be using tropical beaches in our pictures. You're not going to be using lingo that's not going to work towards what they need. So we have got a very similar, in my opinion, very similar field of work. So in that sense, creativity runs just as deeply through all of you guys in your department as it does for us.
I think the other thing with that is, like, when you do your research, like if you're reporting and stuff and you've noticed people aren't reading 1,000-word blogs, then you do one that might be 400 or 500, and then you do get feedback like, why is this one short? I think it's because people are comfortable with the type of content that they're creating itself. Like, it's been the same for so long. Probably a bit fearful of, why is this one shorter, or why is this one in a checklist, why is this one, completely different from what I've been used to for the past 5 years. So I think it's part of realizing what does work for your audience and what they do want, and also what other people are doing out there in your same industry. If people are, for example, making stuff more visual, or they are shortening their copy, or they're making more video-based stuff, why would you keep doing the same thing? Just because someone's familiar with it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
No.
So that's where you can be kind of stuck in a rut or challenge with how creative you can be, because when someone's that familiar with it, you feel like that's what they like, that's what I'm going to create.
Yeah. On that subject as well, there are always limitations, which we've already kind of touched on that with quantity of text. That's one of the bigger problems that we have. Shared challenges, some of the feedback that we get.
Vagueness. Big one for me is make it pop.
Make it pop is I hate it. I hate those words.
How do I make? Just see what I do. What I did is, if there's a bit of vague feedback, I'm just highlighting and click backspace. I get to do it. It's not a problem if it's not there. So
what? So is that your solve for that, or is
that's how I solve it? Or just ask them for more feedback. It might delay it by a day or two, but I'd rather get it delayed a day or two, get it right, than ask a question and then they come back 3 days later and I get to it the next day and I send it back, and then 3 days later they come back saying, no, you still haven't made it pop enough. Like, it's a lot of back and forth. So
do you ever have to push back and say, well, actually, in you trying to make this pop, it's actually going to do worse for your content piece than it's going to do good?
Of course, you wouldn't accept everything. Like, it's difficult. As life as an agency, or if you're a freelancer and you're doing work for a brand, is you think what they say goes. I think if you just remember, like, they're bringing me in as a copy expert, the design expert. I'm not just their lackey who's going to say yeah to everything. Like, they put me in for my skills.
No.
Then you do push back. But I think the number one challenge for me is, I'm sure it's for you guys, or just vagueness. It's not going to help anyone. Just be specific. I don't like this bit. Change it to X, Y, Z. Good. Let's move on.
Well, I have this joke about my job as a designer is that, I don't know if you'll agree with it, which you probably won't, but, you might.
I'm a secret designer anyway, so I probably will agree with it. Just to be clear, okay. Bilal has banned me from designing anything D22 related.
With good reasons. I say sometimes to people that as a designer, we tend to have to read people's minds. Because sometimes when they ask a vague question or vague feedback, or sometimes when they say make it pop, I often think, well, in their heads, have they got like a big billboard with flashing lights on in the background? Actually, I just had a thought there. Video as well, like animation. You've got to write for content for that, but some of the feedback that we get for the script. And then when we get to design stage, we think, okay, please God, don't change the script at this point, because now I can design to that. And then that gets signed off, and then we get the animation done. And then they want to change the script again there.
That's it. I think that links to any bit of content. Like we said, internally when we do blogs, we don't have custom stuff unless we specifically request it. But I think when we're doing like a premium piece for a client, I do think one of the biggest frustrations that we both share, because you drag us into it, and rightfully so, because we're the copy experts, is when...
Well, it's not just us who have that frustration, it's our cameraman has that frustration. Isn't that right, John?
He's shaking his head. I think, say we've done an ebook or something, and it's been a struggle, and we've got it signed off, copy signed off, like, finally, Bilal, is your problem now. Then when it's designed, then they come back and make more changes. It's like... that's a challenge.
It's the fear. That's... Those projects cost time and money. For ebooks, it's okay after a while, but structural changes, that's another issue. Web copy changing later on in the game, and we've got this whole gated process where we try and shut it off, and it's a nightmare.
That's the thing. Like, we do want feedback. Everyone wants feedback. You need to know what's working and what isn't. I just think time it properly. Don't change stuff once it's already designed up. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time, but.
But the good thing is, though, you and I, and any of our writers and designers, we emphasize and we understand, what the client's going through in their head. It's their baby at the end of the day. That this is something that they've been with through day one, especially when we're working directly with directors of big agencies, that we're taking their branding and we're doing something with it. They'll want us to abide by it, especially when it comes to tone of voice and copy too. First time I've heard in calls where clients are being very specific about how they need to be portrayed and how they want the overall language and tone of voice to be. So, as often as I'll joke about them holding the pencil when it comes to actually designing, that we're not actually the ones designing. They're still using us as expertise and trying to get our opinion and our take on it, and we'll always provide and offer a professional look and an outlook on their outcome, basically. Is it easy to write content, is it easy to design, or how can I put it this way?
What's easier?
Is it easier to make pictures, or is it easier to write words?
It's difficult. I think it's easy to do both. It's difficult to do both of them well. That's probably the difference. Like, anyone can write, but can everyone write really well?
Can everyone hold a camera and record?
Yeah, I mean, if you had to pick one that's easier, I don't think I can pick one that's easy, to be honest. I'd be doing both a disservice. They're both difficult. They're both difficult.
I think it's easy to paint pictures, to be honest, so make pictures.
No, but if it's like, if I came in with all my design expertise, if I came in and started designing a website, that website's not going to look good. Yeah, I can do a bit. I wouldn't trust me to design a website. I wouldn't trust me to design an ebook, just like I wouldn't trust someone not in content to write a full ebook for someone.
I'm the worst with words. Even right now, doing this podcast, I see a word in my head and I can't quite find the right word to use.
Neither of them are easy. Well, to do well, neither of them are easy.
I think you can draw. I mean, people say they can't draw. Can you draw?
I could, yeah.
You can't say no, because you can.
Yeah, but again, the question is, can you draw well enough?
What's well enough? Is there
to sell something, to captivate someone's interest, to, as you said, on a book, to make sure someone picks it up? I can't design anything that someone's going to pick up on a bookshelf. Just like someone not involved in content can't write a compelling story for like a 600-page novel to keep someone engaged for that long. It's difficult on both sides of it.
I think in that argument, you pretty much agreed with me there. I think because writing is
getting interest for longer.
Yeah, you got to keep them engaged, but some people keep people engaged without knowing it and realizing it, because they are actually using they're hitting the right tones, they're sending the right message across, and the person who's listening is engaged, but they might not be aware of that. But actually, at least with drawing, you're fully aware of what looks nice and what doesn't.
Yeah, but again, like, if you can learn to write the basics, that's fine. But when you can draw, then you got to learn all the software that you use. That's a completely different ball game, a completely different skill set.
It's always going to be
like that's. I can do a square and a circle on a piece of paper, but give it to me on a software, like, I don't know where the hell I'm starting.
Once you know it.
Same with video stuff. Yeah, I can press record on a camera, but give me to edit, no thanks. Like, it's a different skill set. I think it applies as well to certain things. Can anyone write a blog? Yeah, anyone can write a blog. Can anyone write something that'll keep someone interested for 20 minutes, like a book? No.
John, can you read? Can you read?
Can you read?
Can you read? Can you read? Design? Would you rather draw, or would you rather write something?
I'd rather draw.
There you go.
Yeah, but he's speaking from a visual perspective. If you had someone from if you had someone like Paul sat there, he'd probably say, I'd rather write. The wrong audience there. He's always going to pick the visual side.
Would you like to draw more and design more, or?
I mean, I tried and I got banned.
I mean, aside from your ban,
aside from a ban,
I would happily lift a ban if you were willing to take a.
If I was willing to behave.
No, not to behave. Well, yeah, well, that's a given. I mean, behaviour is one thing with me, but I would lift that ban for you. So, hypothetically, I lift a ban and I gave you a crash course for a week on how to design your own assets. Would you like to? In fact, should content writers create their own assets?
With training, yes.
With training, yeah.
Blindly, no. Because I think one thing content, like I'm guilty of in the past, is when I'm in the zone for writing, I don't care what design do with it. How I know you're gonna make it look good. I'm not gonna give you prompts on what to do because that's your problem now. But I think if you're writing it and designing it, you're kind of taking a more methodical approach to it. Like I'm gonna write this in this way because when I'm designing it, I'm gonna make it look like this. Whereas if I'm not designing it, that's your problem too. Nowadays we do give prompts and like, can you do this with X? Can you do this with Y? But I'm just in writing mode. My thought process isn't, Bilal, I want you to do this. I'm sorry to say that's like the last thing I care about. So if I'm writing it knowing I'm going to design it as well, I'd take more care and more attention and a more methodical approach because I know exactly how I want it to look at the end. Should they? Man says yes when they have the knowledge to do it and the means to do it.
The knowledge and means, right? So I can teach you how to design using the software. I can make you aware of the rules. Once you've got that,
do you want a job at D22? It's like you're just going to give everything to me to do.
Well, no, that's not what the argument here. Not the argument. The statement I'm making here is that I could teach I think I said this in an earlier podcast, but you teach a man to fish that can feed their family for life. So if I taught anyone how to use the design software and showed them how to follow the rules, specifically things like typography and layout and things like that. I honestly think that, like, to teach words and to understand language, English language.
I get that. Yeah, that is more. Again, it goes back to that. So that does make content more difficult, man. I think you can template stuff as well. There's so much software that you can template. It's easy for someone to go, not easy, but it doesn't take as much effort to go in and edit these templates, and you've got one thing in the same branding all the time. Whereas copy, if it's from scratch.
So you agree then? Content is difficult.
Yeah, if we're going back on my way there, I'd say if I had to pick one, I'd go copy. Like, writing copy is probably more difficult.
I agree. See, it's not too difficult.
Your podcast brings people together. I like it.
Well, I've already asked you if you could design, or
I'm
do
a
you
designer.
think you could design?
I'm a designer.
But you're not.
But I am. That's Paul. I'm a designer.
Anyway, we're gonna move on.
I'm not a good designer, but I dabble in design here and there before my band.
Okay.
Why was I banned? Just out of curiosity.
Just out of curiosity, why were you banned?
Yeah.
Because you were getting power hungry.
Fair point.
We had that conversation.
Yeah.
Quick fire round.
Let's do it.
I'm going to ask you a series of short questions which you can say yes, no to, or answer depending on what the question is. For example, I'll give you the first taster. Who's better at FIFA, me or you?
Me.
Don't need to answer it now. I just gave you it as an example. And people just answer these questions straight away. I don't understand. All right, are you ready for this? Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
That's just my example of how quick I can answer. I'm better at FIFA.
Opening a new window or in a new tab?
New tab.
Single scroll websites or multi-page?
Single scroll.
Okay. Content first or design first?
Content first.
Despite all we've talked about.
Despite what we talked about, I think content first.
All right. Content or design?
In what sense?
Which is better?
Content. I'm not going to go against my craft.
I'm just trying it on, mate. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You have to drop one forever. Which one do you drop?
Facebook, I never use that.
You never use it. I'm the same. Facebook's a bit. Twitter, though, I'd never really tweet much.
Twitter just for my news, that's it. I don't tweet. I've tweeted like 100 times in 7 years.
No, I've not tweeted. I tweet for complaints, nothing else.
Fair enough.
Yeezys or Air Force Ones?
Yeezys.
Okay.
Pure comfort, that's it.
Iron Man or Captain America?
Captain America.
No, Iron Man.
No.
Why Captain America?
Patriotic. And
He has a shield.
has a shield. One's got money. Saying that for Batman or the
Iron Man can fly.
I don't care. Doesn't bother me.
He's scared of heights.
No, I like heights. Well, I don't like heights, but I'm not scared of them.
Title case or sentence case?
Title case.
You're more title
I'm a
case kind
title
of guy.
case guy. Yeah, such a nerdy thing to ask, but yeah, I'm a title case guy.
I never understand title case, but there again, this is why content's more difficult to remember.
Use a generator.
Or Wordly. What is it, Grammarly?
Grammarly, yeah, that can sort it. Well, yeah, plenty of
Yeah.
generators out there, different style guides, different rule books. You'll find the right one.
Paint a picture or write an essay. Which would you rather do?
I prefer to write an essay.
Than to paint a picture.
Yeah.
Like, you got a nice, beautiful set of colour paints.
If you give me, like, that's because I'm involved in content. If you told me do this essay by tomorrow, I'd do it. If you said paint this in the style of Bob Ross, it's not going to happen.
It's just a simple question, really.
Sorry.
Didn't-
I'm passionate. What can I
Sorry
say?
to get you worked up on that one. But these are what's going to make you and break you in this podcast. Mobile first or desktop first?
Mobile first nowadays.
Mobile first.
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's a weird one because I'm at work, I'm going to use my desktop, but if I'm at home, I'm going to use my mobile.
Yeah, it's true. I'm constantly on the screen, and then
Yeah.
once I'm at home,
On a smaller screen.
on a small screen. On a scale of 1 to 10, how creative are you?
7.
7.
I'll be humble-ish.
Very modest of you.
7,
I
yeah.
would say you're more 9.
Thank you.
But if you're saying 7, I'll say 7 too. for
We can
you.
meet in the middle. Let's go 8.
You want to meet in the middle?
Let's go
8.
Yeah, let's go 8.
Okay, we'll go 8 then. A meal with chicken or lamb?
Lamb.
Prefer lamb, innit?
Yeah.
Yeah, lamb.
Premium.
Yeah, premium stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone likes chicken, but
Too accessible.
very accessible. Too
Yeah.
flexible.
You don't know if it's real chicken or not.
Lamb
could be,
isn't
could be a
for the-
pigeon.
Yeah, it could be a pigeon.
You never know.
Okay. A night in or a night out?
In.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say, if you're saying
Those
night
days are
out-
behind me.
Yeah, those days are behind me. And the last question. Favourite thing about working at Digital 22?
First thing about Booker D22 is the people.
The
I like the
people.
people here, yeah.
Yeah, I respect that. I respect that.
I like a lot about here, but yeah, to go to answers, the people.
Yeah.
You want good people to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, look at me. You work with me.
Some people.
Time for settle debate. This is
Yeah.
something we do every episode where we want to settle something that people might tend to argue about in the office. We tend to argue about a lot of things, and
Did we settle content and design? What's better?
we didn't settle that.
Did we not?
No, we did. Actually, we did. Yeah.
And we said content's better.
No, we said design was pretty much the way
Right,
forward.
okay.
Like,
I don't remember that conversation happening, but yeah.
well, if you rewatch this episode, you'll see. So anyway, who? So this debate is who would win in a fight between me and you? No, between the Hulk and Superman.
Hulk versus Superman. Easy. Every
Why
day.
Superman?
Nobody can beat Superman.
But nobody can beat the Hulk.
Yes, they can. If it came down to a battle of death, Superman wins. There's nobody that can beat Superman. Apart from Doomsday, nobody can beat Superman.
The Hulk.
Yes,
is-
he's strong.
is-
Superman is also strong.
indestructible.
He got scared of Thanos. I know that's a film, not a comic.
He got
but-
scared of that. Yeah, but
Man,
put the films aside. Just focus on the comics purely, right?
he's big, green, and angry. Wow.
Yeah. Indestructible.
Doesn't do much for me.
Superman, right? You give him a bit of kryptonite, he's finished.
No one just carries.
That's like giving me some
nobody
nuts
carries
and
kryptonite in the pocket.
Hey?
Nobody just carries kryptonite in their pocket
Well, Batman might.
specifically for that crap film he did. But Superman wins every single day. What do you think? Mate, the Hulk is just big and green.
Don't overthink it.
Yeah,
Give me one answer. Hulk or Superman?
yeah, I'd probably go with the Superman.
The guy got super in his name. Right? Says it all. What do you think?
I still think the Hulk. Just
Wrong.
because
It's a wrong answer.
raw power, anger, just
Superman has power.
Superman has power because he came from a different planet, and this planet.
We're not saying like you can't count where he's come from. Like taking everything into account. Yeah, he might be an alien, but he's strong. He's the most powerful.
Hulk's one of our own.
I don't care.
You don't care about one of your own? No.
Not got my backing, I'm afraid.
Well, there you have it. Is there anything you wanted to add? Any kind of news or any?
Any kind of news?
Well, not news.
We're hiring. And,
We're hiring, yeah.
We're hiring in the content team. I
looking
can just
for
use
people.
this for my recruitment bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to work closely with myself and Bilal.
You do have a podcast, but at the minute it's still
On hiatus at the minute.
hiatus.
Yeah, on
yeah.
hiatus. You'll find a lot more effing and jeffing, shall we say.
In your
On the
podcast, yeah.
podcast,
We
yeah.
keep it clean
It's
here.
raw,
Yeah.
from the heart, pure passion.
I mean, this was quite passionate.
It was quite passionate, yeah.
You got a bit emotional at one
bit.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, look out for that.
Okay.
January 2022, the comeback, explicit content, wherever you find your podcasts.
Hopefully, try and get some more of your teammates on this next time around, I think.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, if that's everything, that just about wraps it up for this episode on design versus content. Thanks for tuning in, and if you enjoyed this debate, just losing my words here. This is why content is very difficult. Anyway, if you enjoyed this debate, stay tuned for more, and until then, see you later.